big program, okay? And we teach undergraduates from the beginning to the end. We also teach graduate students. We have PhD students. We have master's students. So we have to find a way for everybody who's involved in all areas of instruction to really understand two things: what the assessment process is and how do we do it. And really the third thing, which is the overall why we're doing it. We should be able to tell students, and I won't say guarantee, but at least find some way of assuring them that when they get out of here and finish our programs, what it is that they're going to know, what skill sets are they going to be able to bring to the next level, either within their graduate school careers if they go on for postgraduate education, or in their first entry-level job. We should be able to look at our learning. They should be able to look at the learning objectives and say, this is what I learned. These are the talents and skills that I bring to this position. The assessment process, discussion of and defining of learning objectives of your program will not happen by one person looking at the program. And the bigger the program you have, the more individual ideas you have about learning objectives. And so if you can get at least a very good cross-section of faculty involved, and staff as well, because they often have a fairly good idea about the way that the program looks to a non-academic, the better off you're going to be. And obviously getting started early in the process and giving that conversation time to go in the direction that it needs to go in, I think is very important. There were two initial responses to assessment, the idea of assessment. One is that I already assess my students. No, you do it. You assess your students. That's exactly correct, but you don't assess them as a whole, programmatically. Do they achieve as a whole the level of competency that you think that you would like them to have? And so that was the first key thing. The second key thing was the initial resistance in that, well, they're going to tell me how I'm going to have to teach, and the academic freedom argument. Once that was explained and really iterated that this is not going to be used as a way of assessing your teaching, but assessing the entire program's teaching, then that became much more relevant and much less scary to them. And so that, I think, made a huge difference. I put together a broad committee of faculty, which not only included faculty, but it also included instructional staff as well as support staff, to come up with ways to identify really the assessment goals, the learning objectives of what our program really needs to have. And so so that was really an important first step. And really that was, getting that started early was key, because it really took us 2 to 3 months to actually come up with a coherent, cohesive list of learning objectives. The problem then, of course, we were in a big, broad department, is we had been discussing learning objectives as a group, for a couple of months. Then when we roll them out to the faculty, you have a list of 5 or 6 learning objectives, and they actually can't see how that fits with what they're doing in the individual classes. And so we had this paradox of trying to be concise and focused on learning objectives, but we needed to find a way to make them broader so that everybody could understand and see how what they were teaching fit in to the process. And so that was the first step. The idea that we have gotten the right learning outcomes, that's really the biggest question of all. We think that we've identified what we're teaching our students. We may not be. And so that's the first problem. The second part of the problem is we don't know whether the instruments that we're using to test whether the learning outcomes are being achieved are the right instruments. And for sure there, I'm virtually certain that were not on the mark completely. The biggest challenge that I foresee is for us, once we've collected the data, and that's a hurdle that we're really we're just trying to cross over now, how to collect and archive that data. The next challenge will be actually how to analyze it and implement the take-home lessons that we get from those and analysis of those data. So we won't know whether we've achieved our learning objectives or even whether we're in the right ballpark for asking about the learning objectives until we actually go through the process once. I think the greatest success that we've had is getting people to understand why we're doing this, in that we as academics are always thinking that we know what we're talking about, but we never ask the question. And this is really kind of unusual when you think about it in a science department. You would always like to, you think you're always asking questions and testing yourself, but we've never really tested ourselves. And so that was the key, I think, was to get people to realize that this is really a test of our own hypothesis about what we're teaching our students. And that hypothesis needed to be cast at all of those different levels.